let's talk about some old-fashioned budget cutting. Join me now is OMB Director Russ Vought, my great friend. Russ, welcome. So, as we know, you broke some news today already. We got a rescission. You are sending up a rescission of $9.4 billion. USAID and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting couldn't happen to a nicer bunch. My question to you is there more coming?
Yes, I think so. I think one of the things we want to see is what the appetite is to pass this. The Hill has been clamoring for us to send some of the DOGE cuts. This is the first in a series that we're ready to go on. You have the $1 billion for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which is predominantly the NPR and PBS, which is giving us leftist news for decades and cultural indoctrination for the last 4 or 5 years. That is incredibly problematic when you talk about children's programming that includes a drag queen, when you talk about documentaries pushing reparations and white privilege. And then you get to the straight DOGE cuts at $8.3 billion at USAID, which the country has been shocked by as they've become out there in the public domain. Sesame Street for Iraqis, pushing vegan education in Zambia, electric buses in Rwanda. You just go every single program that the USAID funds. Not only is it wasteful, but you actually get a sense of the extent to which that agency was pushing weaponized cultural indoctrination in other countries. And then we step back and we wonder why they hate us so much. Well, this bill puts an end to it. We do want to see it pass. And so we're working with the House and the Senate. They've assured us that we're going to have successful votes on this. This is going to be an important debate, and we will send up more rescissions bills if they continue to pass.
So that leads me to this question. I don't know. I think at the last count, the DOGE postings was $150 billion in savings. Okay, I may be off a little bit, but that number rings a bell. If I'm way off, you can tell me. But my question is, how much of that $150 billion would go into additional rescissions, and or how much of it would go into the budget reconciliation package, which I hope folks understand is separate from a rescission, although they both only need a majority vote in the Senate and the House. In other words, is there a big DOGE package coming down the road, or is that going to go into reconciliation, or what?
So reconciliation is a mandatory exercise. So you're dealing with programs that are on autopilot. We talk about those as the welfare programs, the benefit hammocks. We used to have a social safety net. Now we have these programs that are largely keeping people out of the workforce. That's the kind of conversation that you're having in a reconciliation context, where you have the benefit of getting fast-tracked through the Senate, at least without regard to the Senate filibuster. DOGE cuts are discretionary. Particularly the waste, fraud, and abuse. There's obviously a great amount of work being done on improper payments. But as it pertains to the savings at all these agencies, that is a discretionary process that happens as part of the annual budget process. Rescissions is probably the only part of the Impoundment Control Act that you and I like, Larry, in the sense that it allows us to send up a bill, avoid the Senate filibuster, get an up or down vote. We probably dislike the rest of the Impoundment Control Act, that it precludes or has wrongly been viewed to preclude the president's ability to just not spend the money later in the year. But those are two different trains, both of them very important, from the standpoint of what our fiscal trajectory is to get to balance. But we'll be working on both of those areas.
So I guess, the answer is the DOGE stuff will go into the reconciliation bill, yes?
Again, the reconciliation is a mandatory exercise. The DOGE savings are discretionary.
Oh, so
that goes through rescissions and throws through the annual appropriations process.
So that's not going to go into reconciliation. So that's a separate crusade. Because I'm trying to figure out, and I'm not alone, if you've got $150 billion thus far, the year's only a third over, or whatever it is. That's a heck of a lot of money, and how's that money going to be permanently saved? What happens to that money? Do I just write an X over the check? In other words, Elon's doing the Lord's work. His group that was doing the Lord's work, I interviewed Elon, but then Brett Baer interviewed his top lieutenants. What happens to their savings, Russ Vought? That's what I'm asking.
Larry, coming soon to a theater near you, but the first step that we have is, if to the extent that the amounts of money that have to be passed by Congress, we're going to start to send them up to Congress and get them voted on. But we have a lot of executive tools at our disposal. You and I have talked about them before. We're not there yet. We're still going through a programmatic review on a lot of these things and their authorities. But I think you're like the efforts that we're putting in the plan that we have in place to be able to make those savings permanent for the taxpayer over the next several months.
All right. Well, that's very important. Final point is, you mentioned the trajectory. You have these 10-year estimates. I know they are what they are. Are you on the right track? I mean, at the end, are you where you want us to be looking out 10 years when you submit your official budget or when the House and Senate? They're talking about $1.5 trillion of spending cuts. Is that enough? I know we got to have growth, and we're not going to have growth if there's an income tax hike, but let's not talk about that. We've already beaten that one. I mean, are you where you want to be, Russ Vought? That's what I'm asking. Just the last 25 seconds.
I would say from the standpoint of where we are in a new administration, we've never seen anything like this. So in terms of the amounts coming in from tariffs, the enthusiasm, when was the last time we had Congress asking for a rescissions bill? And then to have the fight in Congress being on the budget resolution, we have to go north of $1 trillion. That would be the most historic mandatory reforms we'd seen since the mid-1990s. And so I couldn't be happier. Is there a lot of hard work to do and be done? Absolutely. But in terms of the momentum and the center of gravity of this city, what we're going to come along later and present with the president's budget once we get to it, as soon as we can, we know folks are waiting on it. You're going to see a balanced budget. You're going to see a healthy fiscal trajectory, and we couldn't be in a better position.
Balanced budget. Two great words, two lost words. Russ Vought, thank you very much. We appreciate it. OMB Director.